So we got some leaked details of what Joe Biden is planning on including in his next big package. That's infrastructure and also some welfare spending, including universal pre-K and community college. We are also now getting some insight into what one of the trickiest figures in the Democratic caucus is thinking about these things. Joe Manchin spoke with NBC News about what he would be willing to back. And actually, look, on the surface level, we can go ahead and throw this up on the screen. On the surface level, matches up pretty well with what Biden is talking about. So he says he wants an enormous infrastructure push. He's previously said $4 trillion. He didn't give a specific dollar amount here, which is actually way more than even what Biden is proposing. He's open to lifting the corporate tax rate. I think the Biden people wanted to lift it further was what was leaked. Yep. He also is talking about an infrastructure bank, floating a VAT tax. Said that he was open, though, to other ways of funding it. So that seemed to leave the door open for some of the other tax increase provisions that the Biden team had floated. And he criticized the GOP for their reluctance to raise taxes. So now, Saagar, of course, the big question is that it looks like you could get Joe Manchin on board with a lot of what the Biden team is ultimately proposing here, based on what we know. And Biden is supposed to officially unveil their proposals on, I think, March 30th in Pittsburgh. But it looks like, he'd be in the realm of somebody you could negotiate with. Right. The question is, are you going to do it through reconciliation? Are you going to keep the filibuster in place? How are you actually going to move this piece of legislation through? Because previously, Manchin had said he's not going to do anything else without having Republicans on board, right, which would rule out using that bare majority through reconciliation, even though I think a lot of these pieces you could technically move through reconciliation without running afoul of the parliamentarian.
This is where I actually do think Manchin may be setting himself up to a point of, I tried to negotiate in good faith, but the Republicans will not join me on a single tax increase and then go forward and move this through reconciliation. I should say I'm a huge supporter of infrastructure bank. That's something that people have been talking about for like 10 years and is like one of the most important things that we could have. Any sort of financing corporation with government loans, this is New Deal era, basic level stuff, which has massive outsized impact. Same thing on the corporate tax rate and all of that. I think these are all, generally decent proposals. And so I think it actually could lead to a situation where they will move this through reconciliation. And again, it puts Republicans in such a tough spot. What do? Infrastructure is so dramatically popular. I mean, if you were to look at, in terms of the popularity of the Biden agenda, quote unquote, it would be number one, those COVID relief checks, which have now been dispatched. Number two would be vaccines. Infrastructure for years has polled at the top of what Americans will consider. It brings actual blue collar jobs to many communities. It's a big boon. Unions love it. I mean, there's no way of getting it. People love better roads, more bridges, etc. And deficit politics is just dead, unless you have like the bridge to nowhere and all that stuff. That era of politics is just gone, I believe. And so I think he could set himself up to deliver for Biden. I think probably one of the single most popular pieces of legislation, and it would lead to a situation where almost certainly every GOP senator would vote against it for political reasons, and you would find yourself once more in a scenario where you are on the correct side of massive public opinion. So if you're a White House official, you should actually be quite enthused by this. And Jeff said many were calling him being like, really? He said this? So that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, this is going to be another thing that has 80% support. I mean, 100%. I just don't see anything in here that's going to be like, really galvanizing the Republican base.
I don't either.
Mitch McConnell was quoted in this story, so I guess this gives you a sense of the attack that they're going to try to level here. He says the Trojan horse will be called infrastructure, and inside the Trojan horse will be all the tax increases. Yes. The only way I think they could pull that off would be through reconciliation, is what he says. Probably right about that part. But I have to say, too, much as I am critical from a policy standpoint of them taking off the table increases in taxes and people, $250K, they upped that threshold to $400K. Listen, people who make in that $250 to $400 range are some of the biggest pains in the asses in politics. It's true. They get listened to. These are all the Karens of the world. Yes. They kick up a fuss,
moms,
freak out. They get listened to. They have disproportionate political clout. So I think the fact that he took them off the table and truly is just targeting the wealthy, rolling back some of the Trump tax cuts, upping the corporate tax rate, upping capital gains for assets over $1 million. These are some of the things that are being floated that he's looking at. Again, I think it makes it really hard for Republicans to galvanize any kinds of opposition to this. So I think they're going to play the same game that they did last time of just basically not really say anything about it, not support it, but just hope that they can focus people on some other scandal, whether it's what's going on at the border or the latest Dr. Seuss outrage or whatever it is that they can grab onto.
Remember this, the lowest point of Donald Trump's presidency, the lowest ever approval rating he ever hit was the day he passed that tax bill. The day he passed the tax bill. Nobody will tell you that one, but that's the truth. And so you go on the other side of that, and if you make Republicans defend a lower court, look, on policy or not, it doesn't actually matter what you think. 60% of Republicans support a wealth tax, a wealth tax. So this is not even close to what a wealth tax is. So you can just see that the disconnect between where the base is and what they'll get upset about versus what the politicians are fighting for. Friend of the show, Brian Schwartz at CNBC, just sent me this story that behind the scenes, influential groups are gearing up for the fight of their lives over Joe Biden's plan to raise taxes on the rich and the corporations. They are calling it the Super Bowl of tax reform. So,
you kind of love to see.
Yeah, I'm gonna enjoy being on the other side and just lobbing as many bombs in there as we can.
Give me all the billionaire tears right here.
Okay.
All right, more rising for you after this.